Before we kick into our talk, can I have a bit of a show of hands who out there is a designer? Whoa, awesome. It's really interesting thinking of that term design and what it actually means and who identifies as a designer and why. Ruth and I both have design in our roles, Ruth being a designer through and through, and me being a design researcher. We've been prototyping products, services and experiences for over a decade, mostly apart, but also briefly when we worked together. We recently paused to consider how we go about prototyping, in terms of what we do, how we do it, and the impact our approach has on the designs we create, and most importantly, those people that we create them for. We realise the importance of a key aspect of prototyping, iterating to learn, and the role it plays during the broader design process. In this talk, we're going to step through the typical stages of a design process. Here we've chosen the simpler 3-stage model, but insert your favourite one there. We'll share our experiences of prototyping for use, usefulness and value, and some of the key lessons that we learned along the way. We'll share our thoughts of how iterating to learn lies at the heart of a prototyping mindset and leads to great design. Ruth's going to talk a bit more about prototypes.
Prototype. It's a term we hear and use, and we all know what it means, right? We've learned that it's actually not as simple as it first seems. When you hear the word prototype, you might think of it as a mock-up of an app or something on some kind of screen, and it is that. But it could also be this: a storyboard or journey or experience map, or part of a service experience, or a way of conceptualising part of an idea. The term prototype is used to describe design artefacts, activities and outcomes, from wireframes to mock-ups to pilots. And it's all of that, but a prototype could also be a sketch, one line on a post-it, a role play, some form of cut and paste, or endless different things. To us, a prototype is whatever gets what's in your head out and helps you learn in different ways. Let's look at the shape of that in the first stage of the design process. Early on the design process, it's all about building understanding of people. The people you're designing for, or the people you could be designing for. Their context, their situation, their need. It's all about seeing things from a human perspective. This is often seen as something you read about, talk, or observe. And it is, but prototypes also have a role here, and it's one that is often overlooked. Here, a prototype, whether a representation of an idea or an actual thing, has a role to play. It's a useful tool that helps us communicate in a visual way. It allows us to use those prompts to spark conversation and get a reaction that a conversation and describing alone just can't. At this stage, we sometimes just don't know what to ask yet. It can help us answer some key questions. For example, if you were thinking of getting into the tomato sauce business, you might have some early questions such as, what's up with sauces these days? What place do they hold in people's lives? And what would other people tell you about sauce? There's another role a prototype can take early in the design process, that of a communications tool. When we're in idea sharing mode, working together to better understand the space we're playing in, we can use a prototype to better understand people's needs, not just the main ideas percolating in our heads. The aim here is to give ourselves a bit of direction without limiting ourselves later. Or said another way, Investigate without getting attached. Investigate without getting attached. It's likely we just don't know yet enough to be sure we're building the right thing. So we need to stay in understanding mode, be open-minded, and hold back a bit. So early on in the process, prototyping early can help spark conversation and thinking in two ways. To build understanding when exploring the edges of an idea, and as a communications tool when working as a team to figure out the best problem to solve. It's in this next phase, explore, that a prototype is typically created and put to work. Working in multidisciplinary teams has shown us that when we're at this stage, where we most comfortably play is different. And it's influenced by our roles, our experiences, and our mindsets. The prototype, therefore, also has different roles. I'm a designer. I lean towards learning by building, and I'm constantly creating ideas and forming them and reforming them. Julie is a researcher, and she learns and leans towards learning by testing, but more about that later. To us, ideating is all about working together to pursue the what if and looking at things from different angles. We adopt a bit of a mad scientist approach and mindset that helps us break the mold, explore different ways to approach a design challenge, and do things differently. We give ourselves the permission to go broad, adopt blue sky thinking, and talk through what might seem really crazy. An idea will always be refined later, so you might just well go with it. Here, prototyping is what unlocks our creativity and gives form to our ideas, and we call this learning by building. If you identify as a designer, you will be building every single day. It allows us to unearth different possibilities using different lenses to figure out what we might need to change before we put an idea in front of people. What's interesting here is that prototype might not mean what you think it means. It's not always an early version of the final solution. Remember that it could be a mock-up, it could be a sketch, it could be one line on a post-it, it could be a role play, it could be a storyboard, it could be a cut and paste, or part of an idea. It's a tool to help us learn and figure out as a team, and create a shared understanding of how we're responding to people's needs. And this holds true whether we're working with internal colleagues or clients, and on many different ideas, not just digital or physical products. When we're ready to push some ideas forward, the prototype takes on a different role and perhaps a different form. We step into more traditional territory and use the prototype to learn from someone else, a particular group of people or customers. Prototypes then need to help answer questions like, what does that look like? How does that function? What could make that better? Through a lot of trial and error, we figured out a lot about what works when ideating and prototyping. And some of our top key lessons learned are: keep design a team sport. This is important even for the most experienced designers. It's hard to bring in different perspectives and different worldviews and unearth new possibilities if you're only talking to yourself. As Dan said yesterday, those in different roles look at things in different ways. We've seen that building to learn is a conduit to finding and keeping your focus. Learning through experimentation, and trying things out helps us focus on what is important. We can still let ideas run wild as we're working within the space we've identified to play in. We also balance needs, verbs with nouns. It's really tempting to get stuck on verbs. We're idealists. We know what we want to achieve, but there comes a time when we have to begin looking at tangible ways to actually achieve this. We need to be okay with not being right at first, but inching towards a solution. And in our experience, this also involves nouns, like, for example, states of existence, to sit alongside verbs like the qualities of a potential solution. And stay as long as needed. There's no one size fits all here. Ideate and prototype can be super tight and spiral quickly. Moving on to test quickly, or it can be more involved. It all depends on the nature of the design challenge. Be prepared to keep iterating or move on as needed. Julie will now take us through the last stage.
Cool, thanks Ruth. So when you are ready to move on, you're in the final stage of the design process, and here we use prototyping as we seek to learn different things about use, usefulness and value in different moments. And it's what we're seeking to learn that really changes the shape of the actions that we take. We're going to illustrate this with a pretty simple product example. The humble bottle of, no, that is not it. Tomato sauce. Okay. So this is a Kiwi favourite. You might have seen that UXUI meme going around. We're not going there today, I'm sick of seeing it. But what we've done is we've taken this and just thought differently about it in terms of how it relates to prototyping. So let's start with use and usability. We want to learn how something functions for people, but not just any people, for a specific group of people in a specific context. We want to see how people naturally use or respond to the idea we're taking forward or the idea we want to delve more deeply into. So imagine you're going for a picnic or perhaps having takeaways on the beach. How does our tomato sauce bottle fare? Well, if you've grabbed it from home, I can guarantee it's going to leak on the way. It's happened to me so many times. And imagine you're trying to get that last bit out of the bottle. You're squeezing it, doesn't work. You're banging it on the bottom, the lid comes off, and you've got 10 times as much sauce as you needed. It's clear that there are functional issues to resolve so that people can just get the right amount of sauce on their chips. In our experience, you can prototype for use at all stages of a design process. We've put it here for clarity's sake today. But prototyping for use or usability doesn't just happen at the end. It's not just that final tick in the box. For example, earlier on in the understand stage, you might want to take part of an idea, here, some aspect of tomato sauce, and you can test it to help you determine what field or what sort of space that you want to play in, or to reveal any unmet needs, or even to discover what really matters about a competitor's products, services, or approaches. So let's look now at usefulness. When we move our focus to such questions as, is this the best way to do it? We're stepping away from functional and into those greyer type of areas. We're seeking to learn about people's perceptions, how they're making choices, and what really matters to them as they're making those choices. So let's take a different view of tomato sauce. Let's see how well it stacks up against other options. How well it fills people's particular needs. Of course, it gets tricky here because not everyone has the same needs or wants them to be fulfilled in the same ways. In this case, it might be to hide the vegetables from the kids. It might be to get them to eat their fish sticks, or even to preserve a family ritual. What we're trying to figure out is what makes the sauce appealing and why that is. The job of the prototype, as Ruth mentioned previously, is to get people to show us rather than just tell us. It shortcuts the process and gets us to better ideas faster. Here, the job of the prototype is really to gauge whether you're meeting defined needs in the best ways. prototyping for usefulness has shown us that we need to look a lot deeper. We have to look beyond those obvious tasks and aspects of use and look more into what someone is trying to achieve and why, regardless of whether it's an intended use or not. And linked to that, we've seen that purpose can be a fairly flexible concept. Being open to the ways that others see the world can help us push our designs in new and often really unanticipated ways. We've also learned to focus on the hows. It's about giving enough thought to how a prototype can fulfill needs or respond to a design challenge. We might get stuck in the idea that it needs to be quick, but we need to push past that to look at what would that actually look like? What does the thing need to do? How could it work or function? For tomato sauce, it might just be, it needs to be easy. But what does that actually mean in this context? It's probably how we got those upside down bottles with the lid at the end. So then let's look at prototyping for value. We're seeking to learn the place an idea holds in someone's lives. We're using the prototype to spark an even deeper level of conversation and exploration. Take my situation. If you ask me whether I like tomato sauce, I'll say no. It's not very Kiwi of me. Ask me if I use it, and again, I'll say no. If you show me a bottle of tomato sauce with an amazing design on it, I'll be like, oh, you'll get treated with apathy. But if you come to my house, if you spend time with me, build up a bit of trust, inevitably I'll try and make you a cup of tea. And when I open the fridge, when I open the fridge, you'll see tomato sauce there. You'll see it there alongside my mayonnaise and my soy sauce and my barbecue sauce. But why? I wasn't lying when I previously talked about my preferences and use, but that's only part of the story. Most of my family and friends like tomato sauce. It matters to me that they have a great time when they come over to my house. I really care about that. So for me, tomato sauce appeals to some of my more internal associations about connection and how I see myself in relation to other people. It aligns with some of my deeper beliefs and values. Prototyping for value has shown us that it's never too early or too late to be creative. And that's true for people like me who are uncomfortable with design and having design in my job title. Many different types of prototypes can help us reveal value. For example, using storyboards to unearth the appeal of brand propositions, or extending that even further, asking people to draw out their accounts and their money flows to unearth money mindsets. We've also noted that there are many ways to reveal people's standpoints, those sets of values and beliefs that they hold really dear. Asking isn't the only way. And the most beautiful services can go unused, and the most useful products can sit on shelves, whether that's a shelf in a store or whether it's sitting on a shelf gathering dust in your home. As a designer, you could have done a huge amount of work on a product or service or other experience and really not understood a group of people at all. Prototyping for value can give us really important clues about how best to address what matters to people and to help build stronger long-term relationships with them, because we've got to the core of their why. So we know prototyping doesn't equal one thing. It's about being clear about what you're seeking to learn in any given moment and then creating a prototype to help you learn that. It's nice on paper to think of prototyping for use, for usefulness and value as living within their own bubbles and being somehow sequential. But we live in this area. We know that that's rarely the case. Rarely, not really. Ruth and I, through our work, have dipped into different aspects at different times during the refine stage and even at other stages of the design process. Overall, what we've learned is that we need to give the same amount of love and thought to prototyping for use, usefulness and value if we're really going to make things better for people. Ruth's going to talk a bit more about that.
We know that in design, following a process or a method is not enough. Following the stages of design will get you an outcome, but it might not be the best outcome. Just because it's different and you've iterated doesn't mean it's any better. So whether you're a designer or in a design-related role, we all need to push the design mindset and stretch towards a prototyping mindset. One in which we do all these great designy things that we're already doing. But one that we bake in some additional things. Apply a beginner's approach to prototyping. Be prepared to make an idea tangible, especially when it's not pretty. For a moment, forget about those important but potentially constraining factors like desirability, viability, and feasibility. Become obsessed with need. We need to shift from being outcomes focused to being needs focused. For example, shift from build a bike, which is an outcome, to transport people from X to Y, which is a need. This can be a hard switch to make, but it's essential. Prototyping requires us to see how an idea works and how we can reflect a particular need in a particular way. This is how we truly innovate and create change. Oh, sorry. We also need to redefine terms: idea, prototype, and test. We've all heard the mantra, test early and often. But what are you testing? And why? With a prototyping mindset, we build to learn and we test to learn. We prioritise putting ideas or parts of ideas up for scrutiny at all stages of the design process. It's not just towards the end. We might want to break an idea up and learn about and improve one part. We might want to build a particular type of prototype to test more abstract ideas, one that looks nothing like the end solution. Match your approach to the moment you're in, not what the design stage prescribes. In a build-to-learn moment, trust your intuition. In a test-to-learn moment, be guided by what you're seeing and hearing from others. And always be prepared to throw things away. This might seem like Design 101, but we've learned it's really, really important. Keep looking at what the best solution might be and let go of what doesn't need to be there and doesn't meet needs or contribute to a better design. In other words, keep iterating to learn.
So Ruth and I now think of prototyping as much less of a mindset. As much less of an activity and more of a mindset. It's a way of thinking and doing, one that has iterating to learn at its core. It requires us to more consciously consider what we're seeking to learn through prototyping, and then how can we apply those learnings throughout that process. This is what will help us push our ideas and deliver the most value to the people we're ultimately designing for. And that's the goal, right? So this is what we'd like to leave you with. Don't just prototype to test. Think of prototyping as a tool that can help you learn about people, communicate with your team, and elevate your ideas. And keep asking yourself and of each other, is it usable, useful, and valuable? Thank you.